Well, I have the privilege of introducing two fine law enforcement individuals today that are going to speak to us, and I don't think they need much introduction. One of them is Sheriff Tom Carter, and the other one is Officer Dan Thom. So I was looking for information or trying to find something to talk about these guys or to introduce these guys with, and so I was talking with Officer Thom, and he thought that maybe Sheriff Carter has been on the job a little too long and might need a vacation. And I said, why is that? And he said, well, he's showing some signs. And I said, what are those? And he says, well, there's a few things that keep coming up here. And he says, what are those? And he says, well, every Tuesday he insists on his turn at the siren, running the siren. And sometimes when it comes time to talk about the K-9 unit, he thinks that it might be a good opportunity for him to join that unit because he might look better wearing a collar. Sometimes when they're looking at a stressful stop, he fantasizes that he's Judge Dredd and might insist on executing the people right on the spot. He sometimes also under stress starts arguing with himself in preparation for the traffic stop, and half of him is arguing that he's a good cop and the other half is he's a bad cop. So he starts asking when he puts on his bulletproof vest if it makes him look fat. And the most telltale sign is when he wants to hear less talk and more music in the squad car. So anyway, I'll introduce, I guess it's Officer Thom that's going to give today's presentation. So I guess I'll turn it over to him.
The sheriff was my sergeant for a while, and I had some good stories. I always knew if something was going to happen, when we go on maybe a fight or something, if the sheriff took off his glasses, I just stood back. Because the old school was the sheriff was going to take care of business, and I was just going to watch. I don't think the sheriff takes his glasses off. When he does, he comes in my office and takes his glasses off, I'm a little afraid now. And he goes, oh gosh, what did I do now? So one night, I got to tell you, he was my sergeant for I don't know how many years, and we learned kind of how to work together. And one night we had a call, and I don't know if you remember this or not, but it was an alarm call in the city, and it was at the swimming pool. And so, being a good cop, I'm sneaking in, and I turned my lights off a ways away, turned my siren off, and I turned my driving lights off too, and I'm sneaking in. It was 11 o'clock at night. I'm sneaking in, I'm just going down Locust, and I see this kid just run by me. Well, being a good cop, good cops chase people. So I hit the brakes, I jump out of my car, and I'm after. And I'm yelling, stop, police, stop, police. And this kid's speeding up. Well, I know I'm old and I'm fat. But usually when I get running, I can get going pretty good because you get all that momentum kind of moving. And so I'm running, and this kid turns around and he looks, and his face went, and he went like this, right? I said, get on the ground, and I've never seen anybody do that before. He's like, whoa! And he landed on the ground, and I run over and I cuff him up, like a rodeo guy. It's like, 3 seconds, I got him down. And I'm saying, what are you doing? The cop talk, and because, Sheriff Carter taught me how to talk like, what are you doing? Where are you coming from? The kid was just scared to death. He was shaking, his eyes were big. I said, what are you doing? You coming from over there, where the pool's at? Yeah. He says, did you just break into the pool? He goes, no, dude, man, I was playing Rambo. I said, what are you talking about? Well, there's this game that high school kids play. We get out and the cars kind of chase us around and we get chased by people, and I thought you were one of those guys. And I'm going, whatever, because cops don't believe anything you tell them. Okay? Whatever. And all of a sudden this car comes by about 3 miles an hour, and all these teenage kids pressed with their face in the window going. So I motioned the car over and I said, what's going on? Well, we were playing Rambo. So I grabbed the kid by the scruff of the neck, put him up against my car, take the handcuffs off, and I said, don't ever let this happen again. And tell your parents. Called the sheriff up and said, hey, this may have happened, and so if you get a complaint about me beating up a kid, it's not true. He was always good for that. Anyway, I'm here for a couple different reasons. One of the things that's been going on lately, this is hard for me not to walk around, one of the things that's been going on lately in our county is we've been getting our backsides kicked by burglars. And just to kind of show you some of the statistics of it, as we look at it, as of to date, and this was actually a couple days ago, as of to date, we had 136 burglaries in our county. Okay? 54 grand thefts and 46 petty thefts. And if you think about it, it doesn't seem, we have a county that's 5,200 square miles, something like that. I don't remember how many square miles it is. So it doesn't think like it's that much. But when I started looking at our statistics from last year, we're almost double on our burglaries. Our petty thefts and grand thefts are real close to the same. But you keep going back. Why, even in 2009, why are we getting our butts handed to us? For the lack of a better term. So I started to do some real looking. Okay, first of all, I got to tell you a story about one of these. Just about 2 weeks ago, we had. This is how police work. The really cool thing is when police communicate well to each other, stuff happens. We had a young man, one of our deputies, stop somebody over on the S-curves on Highway 30, and actually the car was stopped. He stopped to check it out, and somebody was curled up in the back seat. And as he was talking to this person, he could see a flashlight over at Idaho Trout Producers. You know where that's at. So he's across the road, and so he puts two and two together. He calls for a couple of the people as he's talking with the girl in the car. The car wasn't hers, didn't know who or where the guy was that she was with. They caught this guy burglarizing Idaho Trout Producers. Well, the officer, this deputy, did such a great job. He described the shoes in a shift report. The next day, we had 3 burglaries in that same area. On each door, a footprint of this shoe, and he called it concentric circles. Each day, or each door had this footprint where the guy had kicked the door. We were able to tie these 4 burglaries together, and this guy obviously, they always rat somebody out. He ratted out who his partner was, and we recovered all of the stolen property. This was 4 burglaries by 2 people in one night. When I look at this number of 136, I can tell you this, it's probably about 10 people. Because they keep going back until they get caught. And it's really kind of interesting when we put somebody in jail, how all of a sudden the burglaries will fall off. So when I started looking at this, why the burglaries are there? Okay, so that was the kind of the thing we needed to look at. Because I think the sheriff's office, with Sheriff Carter leading us, what we want to do is not be reactive, but we want to be proactive. And so we got to figure out how to start it. And you've all heard this term about community policing. I shouldn't say we all have. If you haven't heard the term about community policing, here's what happened in the 1950s and 60s. You knew your cops because they didn't have radios in the car. They would literally go to the station to get the reports, and then they would go meet with people, and they'd talk with people. You would know your cops because in a small town, that police officer would know everybody's kid. And when he caught that kid, he wouldn't take him necessarily to jail. He would be taking him to their house where the parent would put the backside warmed up to him, okay? That was the whole idea about police work. In the cities, it was the same way. We used to have beats that we would walk, okay? So you got to know all of the people on the beat. You got to know people because they sat on the porch, you talked with them. The 70s hit, and all of a sudden this technology of radios in a car came along, and we became people that responded to calls. We lost that interactive relationship that we had with community because of the radio. I'll just black and white point it out. So in 1970-76, they came up with this term called community policing. And the community policing was basically this. Cops, get out of your car and talk to people. How many of you guys have your own favorite cop? Jill, you're supposed to raise your hand. Yes. Thank you, okay. Oh, good. What I mean by that is, if you have a question, can you call a police officer because you know him? I get calls, and I know the sheriff does too, all the time. Because it's so much nicer to talk to somebody that literally has a passion or cares for you, and you can get a problem dealt with. Remember that terminology of it's not what you know, but it's who you know? Sometimes in law enforcement, when you know somebody, you can get things taken care of. Jill came to me with a problem not too long ago. We were able to make a few phone calls, and I believe it got taken care of. It did. Just with a few phone calls. Instead of taking a police report, we could make that real simple stuff that we do with it. That's community policing. And so in the 70s, late 70s, they started implementing this idea of community policing. One of them was a thing called Neighborhood Watch. Another one was called DARE. And basically it got officers back involved again. So what we've tried to do is take away that word that we've used, this community policing thing, and we wanted to go and look at what we're doing and how we can actually implement it with a police officer, because I'll be really truthful, you know what police officers love to do? Catch bad guys. We love to chase people down. We love to drive our car fast. We love to shoot our gun. And we love to get in a fight. I'm not kidding. I'll tell you that right now. If I had 5 cops sitting here right now and there was a fight in that corner, everybody else in this room would be going the other way. And what are the cops doing? They're going to it. We're junkies. Okay? That's just what we do. So it's hard to get a cop to get out of his car and talk to a kid because he wants to chase the bad guy. So what we have to do is implement this mindset with them, and I believe with our deputies, and I believe in the Magic Valley, we're real strong with this, is that we're trying to do that. Now, when you look at calls for service, a call for service is what we respond to or what we initiate. This year, as of so far, we have 22,000 in some numbers. Last year, 29,000, and the year prior to that was 30,000. These are calls for service just for the sheriff's office, okay? And we have about 40 sworn police officers, 45 sworn police officers. Now, to service people, what we have to do is make them feel like they're a person. Brett Paisley has a song, Just Another Dip. You know, when you're working at an ice cream store, the person's just another dip. And maybe you've heard that song. But we want to make this personal. And so coming up with the ideas that the sheriff and the staff has come up with, we're moving in that direction. And I'll tell you what, I like it. I've taught DARE because that puts me in the classroom. I know all these kids. They're all 25 now when I first started. I know a lot of these kids. And yes, I've arrested a lot of these kids. You know, one kid sat in the back of my car and goes, "Hey, dude." He's in handcuffs. I go, "What?" He goes, "You're my DARE officer." I went, "I did a good job, didn't I?" But I remembered him. And I remember a lot of people. And I think that's where we're starting looking at the calls for service. What can we do to change things? Now, FBI's come up with these numbers that to service a community, you need to have about 1 police officer per 1,000 civilians. So Magic Valley, looking at some of the numbers here, I'll back up a little bit. In year 2000, we had about 64,000 people in Magic Valley. Okay, no, I'm sorry, in Twin Falls County. That includes Twin Falls City, Filer, blah, 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 and all the county residents. As of 2010, we're about 74,000. So FBI stats say we should have about 74 police officers per this jurisdiction, per this area. You notice, my numbers are pretty close. We have 45 sworn for the county, 72 in the city. Kimberly, Buell, come to about 134. We're about double what the FBI says is good to have in a region. And yet, I don't know what the city stats are for burglaries, but when I see 136 burglaries in my county, see, I own it. It's mine. It's yours, but it's also mine. I live here too. It makes me angry. And as deputies are starting to get this is my county, I'm seeing deputies going way out of the way. I had a deputy work off duty following people because he was so angry that he was getting burglaries on his shift. It becomes personal. We want to start changing things. Now, does it help to put more police officers in the area? Read the sign if you want to. Does it help to put more police officers in the area? Possibly. You know, there's times where having cops out is a deterrent. Okay? If you've driven down Pole Line when it opened, it's like, ooh, this is a nice road. 65, no way. 73, yeah. Oh, state trooper. Okay? And so that has a tendency to slow people down. Having police officers in jurisdiction has a tendency to decrease crime. Does it do it completely? No. Look at our numbers. Okay, our numbers are up. Now, someone would say, well, look at our society with, people are poor, jobs are hard to get. I don't think it always necessarily comes to that. So putting more police in the community, that can be helpful, but does it answer the question? No. Does education slow crime rates. You guys, back in 1996, when I first became a police officer, I tell you what, when I pulled a car over, I'd walk up to the window, I'd say, I'd like to see your license, registration, and your methamphetamines, please. Because meth was so stinking prevalent. Literally, it was absolutely, anywhere you go, anything you do, you were dealing with meth. And the Montana Project came in, and they worked, and they worked, and they worked, and the media got a hold of this, and there was a lot of other stuff, sheriff's office involved, police departments involved, and we worked, and right now, I have very, very seldom come across a meth user in high school. And that was one of the biggest problems that we had back in the late 90s. Why? Because media put something into it. Now, does media work for everything? Heck no. But it helps. Does media coverage, and I look at that, actually the last one was education. We really talked a lot in high school about meth and how it affected it. And people, and the kids started to see it. And you guys have seen the billboards too, I'm sure. These billboards, absolutely wonderful job. And people, I tell you what, I was teaching schools a lot, and I asked kids about that, and they could quote most of those billboards and talk about it. Media coverage, does that affect things? This is out of a newspaper a couple years ago, last year, I think. I don't remember. But it was on a drug, we were flying the canyons for marijuana. And we started to get more phone calls. Now, what I've done here is I've shown you 3 different things that should make a difference. More police, more education, and more media coverage. Does it always meet all the needs? A combination of the efforts is what we're looking at. What we want to do is focus on a combination of all of the efforts. I don't think one group or one individual organization can do it. But when we start looking at these 3 things, individual involvement, and I'll talk about each one a little bit, individual involvement, community involvement, and law enforcement involvement, that's where the key is going to be. And so I'll just talk about individual involvement. Raise your hand if you've ever been a victim of crime in Idaho. Raise your hand if you've ever been a victim of crime. Okay, I have had my, thank you. I've had my wallet stolen out of a car in Buell, and they charged all kinds of stuff. They charged stuff on my credit card that I wish I would have. Okay, and I made the police report, and they found out who it was, and guess what? Nothing ever happened to him. Made me mad. Made me angry. So when you become a victim of crime, you have actually a different perspective on what crime is. Anybody's ever been burglarized? I'll tell you, this is what you do. You get really angry. Well, first of all, first of all, I feel that I have been violated. They've come in my house. They've tore up my home. And they took things that were mine. I feel violated. The second thing I feel is angry. And I've dealt with victims, and the next thing they do the next day is they buy a gun, or 10 guns, and they put a chain link around their house. So when a person becomes a victim, automatically they have a different view of crime than it's happening to them over there. So one of the things that we want to try to work towards is to get people that have been victimized into the point where they're no longer going to be a victim. Okay? Because once you've been a victim, you don't want to be a victim again. Many burglaries, and I should say many because I find, and I tell people when I take a burglary call, you watch it because they're going to come back again. And many times they do. They come back 2 days, 3 days later to do another burglary, especially if it's a shop, because they got away with it the first time. So I always tell people that, and so what they do, they change the way they do things. Okay? On this back here, there's a map with a pin map on it. When you leave, look and see where you live. See where the rashes and burglaries and thefts have been. Because I want you to look at that, because many times where there's a rash of them, it's because there's 1 or 2 people doing it. We had a kid over in Filer. We called him our bicycle burglar, because he would ride his bike to the homes, burglarize the homes, and ride off. So we don't have tire tracks. He was wearing gloves, didn't have good footprint. We finally caught him, and he was responsible for about 10 or 12 burglaries. Again, it's almost always the same group of people, and so when we get them off the street, it makes a difference. So we buy a gun, we get angry, we change the way we do things, we lock our house, we lock our car. You know what makes me mad? Is I love where I live, and I hate the idea of having to lock my house. I hate the idea of having to lock my car. Does that make you mad? It makes me mad. So I become a whole bunch more diligent about what's in my neighborhood. I'm that Gladys Kravitz, for those of you that remember that. I'm that Gladys Kravitz. I'm looking and going, I'm watching everybody that comes and goes. I was in my garage the other day working, I work out in the country, and a car came and drove through my driveway. Oh, I was so offended. I was like running to run them down the road. Yeah, I don't know, they were looking at probably the wrong address. But people have been burglarized in my neighborhood. So I was really angry, and so I was being really diligent. So once that somebody becomes a victim, they become much more diligent. And here's the other thing, is they tell their neighbors and friends, and that's the beginning of it. To the point where we start looking at things in a different way. Some people even want to move. If you've ever lived in a really rough area, and I lived in Seattle for a while, I didn't like one place I lived, so I moved because I didn't like how rough it was. So I don't want to see that happen. I don't want to see people leaving that. Community involvement. How many of you guys know your neighbors? And I'm not talking about you recognize them. How many of you guys know their neighbors? That's something that always has been important in Idaho. Why have we gotten away from it? I'll tell you a couple reasons. We got a TV, we got a radio, we don't care about our neighbors, whatever it might be. But my neighbor watches my house. I watch her house. I only have one neighbor. I know who's coming and going. And I'm not because I want to know her business, because I care about my neighborhood. And so when I look at that, neighbors start to watch other things. You might even organize a block watch. There's a group that's called, what was it? Sorry, I lost it. It slipped out. I pulled a Perry. Neighborhood Watch, there it is, Neighborhood Watch. They used to have an organization, and I like Neighborhood Watch, but the problem is I don't like meetings. And for those of you that have to go to meetings all the time, meetings get kind of tiring. So I would say just getting with neighbors, related neighbors, and talk with them. I had it when I lived in the city of Buell. There was a house that was across my street. I had a police car parked there. They were selling dope all the time. We call it slinging dope. They were slinging dope all the time. So what I would do, and it was a pain, and I encourage people to do this kind of stuff. When a car pulled up, I'd walk outside, whatever I was wearing. Well, not whatever I was wearing, but I'd put some clothes on. And I'd walk outside with a tablet and a piece of paper, and I'd walk across the street, and I'd look at their license number, and I'd write it down, and I'd walk back in my house. I never said a word to them. That house was there for about 3 weeks, and they moved out. Nobody wanted to come there because I made an effort. Now, I'm not necessarily telling you to do that, but I'm saying whatever is convenient or unique for you to do, that's what I'm saying. We have to become a community part of it to make it work. Then law enforcement, I think this is the one that we're trying to really embellish a new idea within law enforcement itself, and that is to motivate people in our community to make our community safer. And that's where we're going with this. When we have $600,000 worth of stuff stolen as of September this year, 600,000, there's something wrong. And we're starting to recontact with our victims, giving them information. And this is where the whole idea of education comes. Because if I said, let's do a community watch education forum at CSI, I'd get 14 people to show up, and half of them would be my family. You know that. You will deal with things that are important to you. And when I show up back at your house 2 weeks later, a month later, 6 months later, as a police officer going, hey, do you have anything, did you have any other information? We don't have any leads on this. Can you help us out with anything you maybe heard? Hand them some information on how to keep their house safer. Another thing we're looking at is putting addresses on homes to help us respond faster. County commissioners have bought into this one, and they're going to help us provide numbers for the homes in the county. See, we're starting to look as a community as a bigger picture. Law enforcement is just one part of it. We can do a few things, but we really need the community to do most of it. Grand thefts, we have to identify the problem. I know what the problem is. We have a bunch of crap bags that live in our community, and they want to steal from us. And I don't like it. I want to put them in jail. 80% of the 80% of the people in jail today are in there for drugs. Why? Because they're stealing to buy drugs. Black and white. Or they got drunk, they got stoned, and they beat somebody up. So I want to identify it. And identifying that is, where's it happening? Pinboard. We start focusing. I got our guys, our crews now are focusing on areas. And I have guys sitting out there in their own cars waiting and watching, writing license plates number down. That's what I want the neighbors to do. When's it happening? Most of our burglaries this year, I should say most, many of our burglaries this year have been daylight burglaries when people go to work. Okay? I live in the country. I lock my home now. I never used to. the reason I do it is I don't want to make it easy for them. But if somebody wants in your house, how hard is it? Really? Punch a window out, punch a door. If you weigh 150 pounds, you put a shoulder to the door, you can pretty much push a door in. So it just slows them down. So we need to have that people able to see, watch for us. The other thing too is when you're getting involved, you got to call stuff in. Some of the best crimes that I've ever solved are when people call and rat somebody out. That works so well. It's that follow up with the community. Addressing the problem. Working to engage local thieves. I tell you what, this is what happens. On a Friday and Saturday night, my guys are out pulling everything over that moves, and we're trying to find our thieves, our dopers. And we push them and push them, incite them, and push them and push them. Because we want them to leave our county. We want them to be in our jail. We want them to be off the streets. Anybody that's out moving around after midnight, between midnight and 4 in the morning, they're out for trouble. That's something I think of all the time. If a car's out cruising around with a bunch of kids in it, my dad always told me, anything after midnight, you're getting in trouble, boy. I really took that to heart. Looking at the outlets for our stolen property, we chase that all the time. We have some detectives that are working that all the time. Our pawn shops are absolutely great because they have to record everything that's sold to them with ID. And they do that. They stay on top of it. But there's a fence. There's fences in other states that people will load up trucks and send to. Basically, they steal things and they trade it for dope. And the guy that trades the dope sells the stuff. That's how he makes his money. Frequent contacts with local drug users. Again, we roust them. I hate that word, but we roust them. I don't want them. And the more we're on their back, they can think that we're harassing them. We're not. We're making sure that they stay out of trouble. And we're catching them when they're in trouble. Extra patrols in areas. We've got that. When people call in extra patrols, we're really happy to do that because we want to be able to service their needs. Some of the goals of the Sheriff's Office to follow up on the grand thefts, burglaries, and petty thefts is gather more information. We're going to go back to their homes a month, 2 months, a year later, and talk to them again. Gather more information. Educate victims. Give them the information they need so they won't be a victim again. That's one of the hardest things sometimes with domestic violence is somebody to be in domestic violence and you take care of the business that day and 2 weeks later they're bonding that person out and they're moved back in with them. It's frustrating. Education is part of that. Apprehend suspects. We had, after I told you that early incident about the centric circles on the shoes, we had 2 people put in cuffs that day, and they're still in jail. We presented the case very well to the prosecutors, and they gave us a good bond of $50,000 per charge. So when we present a case properly to the prosecutors, they're willing to run with it. They live in our county too. They don't like it. So when we present things properly, when we train our people properly, and we get all the aspects brought together, that's when the community starts to change. And that's kind of what we're starting this goal of changing things by starting with victims. I don't want to have to visit you as a victim, but I want to give you information after you become a victim. That's the goal of the Sheriff's Office. We want to be proactive, and the way we're going to be proactive is to start from the bottom and move back up. We're also pretty proactive too with how many deputies we have on the road. Sometimes at night we'll have 7 deputies on the road. Friday and Saturday nights, oftentimes that's one of the cases that we're doing. The city's the same way. They have a minimum of 5 staffing, but they almost always have 7 on the road. So we have officers out there. We have a really supportive media, and we have some good education programs going too. So we in the Sheriff's Office are working towards that goal to stop the victimization. I'm hoping that in a year from now I can come back and say our burglars are down to 30 or 40. I don't know if that'll happen, but that's one of the goals is to make that work. So the Sheriff's Office is working towards that goal. The Sheriff himself has committed to make this a better place to live, and that's what I want to. I live in this county, I want to be here, and we want to do that for not only for the Sheriff's Office, but for the community as well. So as you walk out today, if there's anything they have questions on, please talk with the Sheriff, talk with me. He'd love to answer some questions. And so I'm not sure how much time I have left. Okay, anybody have any questions I can address? Violent crime has been up too, not just burglaries, but violent crime is up about 15%.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What would you recommend as the most obvious thing to do to make your place less attractive for a burglary?
The question was, how do you make a house less attractive for a burglary? Put a lot of junk cars in the front yard? No, I'm just kidding. You want to have so that you can see the house from the road. So any bushes and shrubs, you want to make sure that they're down low enough that windows can be seen. Lighting is really important. Motion lighting, are one of the things that I always encourage people to do. Put that motion lighting on as much as you possibly can. And motion lighting has come a long ways in the last few years. It used to be when the wind blew it turned on, but now it's infrared kind of thing. Making sure that you have good locks on your doors. The reason I say good locks is because a standard deadbolt, unless those two really long bolts are put in, all you're going to do is break a frame and go in. So when I say that, good locks, it means put them in properly, but from somebody that knows how to do it, not just put a deadbolt into the jamb, because the jamb's only 1x6, and it's long ways, and so it splits very easy. Another thing is take a video of your house, of what's in your house, and write down serial numbers. Put those serial numbers or that video someplace else. I had a guy that had a safe stolen with all the guns in it. Guess where all the serial numbers were? In the safe. So that's a little, so you have to put that somewhere else. And so electronic memory is a great place to put it. And so those are some things that would be helpful. But just, I guess the whole thing, and when you talk about looking from the road, burglars look for that cover of darkness, cover of other things like that. A dog's a good thing too. They don't like dogs. It doesn't have to be a mean dog. They just don't like dogs. Noisy dogs. I have one of those. Yeah, 3 of those. He's giving one away. Anything else? All right, well, thank you guys for letting us come today. We appreciate you giving us that opportunity.
One of the things I'm thankful for is the fact that we do have such outstanding police officers, law enforcement people in our county, and we have 2 of the very finest with us today. So again, thank you very much for your presentation. I do have one announcement.